Hey, what's up you guys? Welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, my name is Mackie and I hope you're all having a great day today. So today we are going to be going over a story that I've been wanting to tell from the beginning, but if you saw my last video, you would know that I have a couple health conditions I've been struggling with my whole life, but the past week or two they've really been flaring up. So just to refresh, I have Crohn's disease and Graves' disease. So I've been wanting to tell this story for so long, but in order to tell this story, I would have had to talk about the diseases because it directly correlates with each other. So now that I told you guys about it, it's time to tell this story. So we're gonna get straight into that today, but before I talk about that, I just want to remind you guys I have brand new merch dropping on the 20th, and all the ghost merch from last month is going to be discontinued on the same day on the 20th. So if you haven't gotten already, make sure you go down to the link below and pick some up before it's too late. Other than all that, let's just get straight into the video. This story is gonna sound a little crazy. I know for a fact some people aren't gonna believe this whatsoever, and that's totally fine because even myself, I'm not 100% sure this is what happened, but it is a big coincidence if it doesn't have anything to do with anything. I didn't even find out about this correlation until probably 2 years ago when my friend, who's super into spirituality and witchcraft, well, she doesn't do witchcraft, but she's super into researching it. She knows a lot of stuff on it. She's actually very religious and does a lot of mission trips and stuff like that, so I guess she's learned about it over the years, and she told me about this. So let's just get straight into it. All growing up, my parents and brother loved to travel. Ever since I was little, I just remember going to different countries or different states, just anywhere really. And since we surf, they always try to go to somewhere tropical that has waves. And a lot of times looking for waves and stuff like that, you end up in pretty small villages in the middle of nowhere that not a lot of people go to besides locals or surfers. Every time they'd want to go somewhere, I was always pretty scared about it. I remember being like 8 years old, not wanting to go because it just made me very uneasy when we'd go to these places. Because one, these are very localized little villages where not a lot of outsiders come in. So when we'd go there, all the village people would just stare at us the whole time, and it just made me feel very uneasy. That's the best way to put it, is uneasy and nervous, and I would want to leave. So this specific trip took place when I would have been in 7th grade. I was 11 years old, and my parents and my brother decided they wanted to go somewhere in South America, and the place we would be staying is a very rundown, I don't even know how to say it, a rundown, cheap place that's close to the waves. So definitely not luxury, nothing like that whatsoever. And so when I heard that it was going to be over our spring break, and I was like, I don't want to go, I don't want to go, I want to be here with my friends, I just don't want to go. Because I hate flying also. Of course, being 11 years old, they forced me to go with them, of course, and I get on the plane, we go there, we land, all is well. We land at night, so we go stay in a hotel in the main city, you could say, so it was pretty safe and chill, and I was fine with that. I didn't want to leave that place, but the next day we got up and ventured out to the tiny village where the surf spot is. A lot of times on our way to our destination, we'd stop in other little villages, just like on secluded beaches and stuff like that, to hop in the water real quick and get food or do whatever. We stop at a couple beaches, we spend a couple nights somewhere else, all is fine. I feel uneasy, of course, but I always do. And then we were about halfway through the trip, making our way to the final destination, and we decide to pull off at another little secluded beach that is in the middle of nowhere. Basically, there's a couple little, I don't know how to say this in like the proper terms, but little like huts or little houses. I don't know how to call it, how to say it, but it's a very, very, very small village. It was like 10 little tiny houses. And so we pull up to this place and the beach is right there. And we get out of the car, and when we get out of the car, everyone who's out just stops and stares at us the whole time. So I get out of the car being 11 years old with people looking at me from everywhere, giving dirty looks, and I was just terrified. And I'm like, please, can we please leave? I don't want to be here. And I just had a really bad feeling in this spot that we were at. And of course my parents were like, no, like we're hopping in the water here. Like just, it's gonna be fine. We walk out to the water, we go swimming for like an hour and body surfing and whatever. We get out of the water, start walking back up to the car, and there's this lady sitting out front of her little house, and she has a couple little knickknacks, antiques, handmade stuff like that. And of course my mom has to run right over to her because she loves collecting those little antiques from places like this. If you saw my video with Amanda, you've seen it. So of course she goes up to this lady, buys this little figurine that the lady had made, and there was a man with her standing at the little house as well. And I walked up with her and I just had the worst feeling in the world. I was just like internally panicking for some reason that we needed to leave, that we need to get out of there. I thought something bad was gonna happen for some reason. And so my mom buys her little thing from this lady. We get in the car and we make our way to the other big city to spend the next 2 nights there. And so we get to our hotel there, and finally I feel relieved. And I know this is so like basic white girl problems of me to be relieved once I get to a hotel, but I was just little and scared all the time. So we get to the hotel, and that night I started getting the worst earache of my life. And honestly, this was the only earache I've ever had. Like still to this day, this is the only earache I've ever had. And it was the most painful thing I have ever felt. It literally felt like someone was taking a knife and just stabbing me straight into the ear, like through my head. It was just throbbing and burning. So I just remember sitting there crying. I needed to stop, make it stop, make it stop. And so my mom runs down to a little pharmacy and grabs some like Tylenol and then these eardrops. And I remember putting the eardrops in, and it was just this thick jelly. Like it was just such a, it was like a syrup, and I just poured it in my ear and it just sat there. It literally didn't go down my ear or anything. It just sat in my ear. And so it was just extremely uncomfortable even having that sitting in my ear. But eventually I end up falling asleep, and the next day I wake up and it was as if nothing ever happened. It was super strange, but I was thankful that all the pain and everything was gone. So we have one more full day there. We stay in the little city until the next morning. We have to go to the airport early to fly back home. Everything went well that night. Everything was all good. We get on the plane in the morning, come back home, and that week is when everything just started going downhill for me. Up until this point, I always had some, like a sensitive stomach where I'd stay home from school a lot in elementary school because my stomach hurt. I just didn't feel good a lot of the time, and my parents just thought I had a sensitive system, basically. They didn't think anything was really wrong with me. And so that week when I got home, I started getting the worst stomach pain of my life. I generally just felt extremely tired. I was, sorry if this is TMI, but I was like going to the bathroom constantly, and it just all started going really downhill that way. So we all thought that I had like some sort of bug that I caught there or something like that, and so we didn't really do much about it until at this point like a month had gone by and I just wasn't getting better. It was like I was okay to go to school and everything. Like I physically looked fine, but on the inside I just felt like so terrible. So they finally decided to take me to a doctor where they run some tests on my blood and other things, and they find out that I have an intestinal parasite called Giardia or Giardia. I don't really know how to pronounce it, but it is spelled like this. And so we found out I have that, so they put me on an antibiotic for that. And they were asking my parents, where could I have gotten this? Like, where did this come from? So my mom goes home and starts researching where we were. So it turns out when we were at that little village, okay, so when we were at the little village, it turns out, I don't know how they didn't notice this, but when my mom Googled the little area we were in, the first thing that pops up when you type in beach in this area is a big sign in front of the beach we were at that says, "Caution, raw sewage dumped here." So basically what that means is The ocean we were swimming in right there happened to be where they took all of their sewage and dumped it directly into the water, and that is what I was swimming in that whole time. So they figured, I know it's like the worst thing I've ever heard in my entire life, and I just don't even want to talk about it. But anyway, yeah, so they figured, of course, I picked up the intestinal parasite by swimming in that water, and they prescribed the antibiotic. I took it, everything seemed to simmer down. At this point, it's like the beginning of summer, we're about to be let out of school, and so everything pretty much simmered down up until when I was entering into my freshman year. I started to get the stomach pain and stuff like that happening again. My mom was like, well, is the parasite back? Like, what happened? And like, I don't know, can a parasite just like regrow itself? I don't really know. And so we just let it go on for a bit just to see the extent of it all, up until I think it was in November of my freshman year that things really just took a turn, because every time, once again, this is too much information and I'm sorry, but I'm just trying to tell you the extent of this. So mid-November, every time, I couldn't even keep anything down ever. Like, it just comes straight out of me. And so it got to the point where I looked down one day, because that's what everyone does, and there's just blood in the bowl. So at that point I was like, I'm bleeding. And so after that, like from that point on, every time I'd go to the bathroom at all, it'd just be blood coming out. So we figured it was time to go to a specialist. So I went to a gastroenterologist, which is a stomach doctor basically, if you don't know. And at this point I'm like 13. I have a really late birthday, so I was still 13 in high school. So I go in for my first colonoscopy and endoscopy, which is super fun. And they did it and literally nothing showed up whatsoever. Nothing there. They said I'm completely clean, so why am I bleeding and all this stuff happening to me? No one really knew. So they're trying to figure out, they're running every blood test possible, and that's when it comes back on my results that my insulin level is so high that the charts don't even read that high. I think it's, so say it stops at 600 being the absolute highest, which is crazy high. Like you should be in a diabetic coma if your levels are at the top of the chart basically. Mine were past that. They didn't even know what my levels were because it was just so far exceeding the highest levels. So they're like, you need to come in right now. Your insulin is like insane. You should be in a diabetic coma right now. And keep in mind, I don't have diabetes. So we go in to the doctor. They're like, we have no idea why this is happening, but you need to go to an endocrinologist like right now, which is a thyroid doctor basically. So I go to my first thyroid doctor, they rerun the test and they say, well, no, you have an autoimmune disease called Graves' disease, and I got put on the thyroid medicine. At this point I'm 14, but yet I'm not even experiencing any thyroid symptoms. It's all my stomach. I can't even eat whatsoever. It's just awful. So we keep going back and forth with the GI, like, what's going on? We don't know what's going on. They don't know. And this went on for a couple years. I did a couple more colonoscopies. Every time it came back clear. So we just had no idea at this point. We did every single test. At this point I'm like 16 or 17 years old. Okay, so I'm just gonna fast forward through all the other gory details. Eventually I found the world's best doctor at 16. At 17 I was officially diagnosed with Crohn's disease. He finally found it and we're like, okay, I'm happy because I'm not crazy after all these doctors try to be like, there's nothing wrong with you. You just have IBS. There's nothing wrong with you whatsoever. I'm like, no, there's something wrong with me. I'm telling you right now, something's wrong with me. I finally get diagnosed. I'm like, yes, I can start getting treated. Yes. And so I go on treatment and it completely changed my life. I know this got a little, seems like it got a little off track, but I had to tell that part to relate it back to my trip. So during this time, my brother was going to school in San Diego. He was at college. He happened to meet this girl that he became really good friends with, and she happened to have Crohn's disease also, and they had a lot of things in common. They were just really good friends. So he started telling her, oh my gosh, you need to meet my sister. She has the same exact thing. And so eventually we meet up, all of us, and me and her were like instantly friends. And she's, like I said, she's super into spirituality, doing all these missions in third world countries. She knows a ton of stuff about literally like everything involving witchcraft, spirituality, like all of that stuff. She's like the expert. Turns out me and her had the exact same story to the T. Everything that happened to me starting with my trip happened to her starting with her trip. Her not being able to get diagnosed because nothing was there. Literally, I'm telling you, to the T, it was like, it was mind-blowing to us. We're like, okay, this is insane. And so that's when she starts telling me her pastor or someone does like energy healings or like does cleansings where they're able to tell someone that if you have a curse put on you, or if someone has ever done witchcraft on you, or if someone has ever done anything dark to you like that. So she starts telling me how this guy told her, you went to a little village and someone saw you there and they decided to put a curse on you. They did witchcraft on you by either giving you an item or just by looking at you and putting a curse on you while you're there. But she was telling me while she was in that little village she went to when she was 11 years old, everyone was staring at her. There was this man there who kept, specifically she felt him just looking at her in like an evil way. And so he eventually walked up to her and offered her this little trinket that he had made. And so her mom was there and she's like, oh, like, honey, take it. That's so nice of him. So reluctantly she took the item. When she got back from the trip, all of her symptoms kicked in and the Crohn's just went off. She had a parasite first and then came all the autoimmune diseases. So when she told me that, that memory's just flashing through my head of my mom buying that little trinket and that awful feeling I had while she was buying it. So over the years of her learning about this stuff, she basically was like mentored or something in this where she's able to now cleanse someone or clear someone of that energy or break the curse or whatever it is. I forgot to say this, but after the man had cleansed her, all of her symptoms just went away miraculously. She still has the disease, but she was in a terrible flare-up, couldn't get her health under control, and once he cleansed her, it was like night and day. She wasn't on any medicine or anything. It was insane. When she met me, she's like, instantly I knew the same exact thing happened to you that happened to me. And she could tell that someone did witchcraft on something and gave it to me. And so right then and there, she cleansed my energy, cleansed it all away. It was crazy. She was like speaking in tongues. It was wild. And so she did all that, and I'm not even kidding, for the next couple of years, I didn't have any flare-ups, I didn't have anything. I felt completely different than I had in years. But still, I'm not like 100% convinced on this because the diseases I have are genetic. So I don't know if it's all just a coincidence or if this experience triggered it. I'm not sure. But I kind of pushed it out of my head and was like, wow, that's like crazy to think about. Like, I'm just happy I'm feeling good, whatever. So a couple years goes by now, and my new friend Amanda comes over for the first time, and Amanda walks right in. You can see in the video when she came over, it wasn't set up, it was nothing. She literally walked in, walked over to 2 artifacts. If you've seen the video, picks them up and says, someone who did witchcraft gave you these. Someone cursed these. Someone did witchcraft on these artifacts. And I didn't say it in the video because, once again, I didn't want to talk about this story yet. But I have never been more serious when I say it. Those are the artifacts my mom brought home from there. So I had a mental breakdown, basically, and I told my mom, Amanda just said this about these. Can you please get rid of them now? So my mom picked them up, put them outside, and they've been gone since then. But I'm going to take you guys out there right now and show you just how many artifacts there actually are out there. I'm just going to say this now. My mom did a deep cleaning about 6 months ago and packed up about 50% of all the stuff we had sitting out. So this is like cut down on how much there is. So I'm going to show you guys that right now because it's just like, what are the odds? Like, that's the thing that just really sold it for me after all these years. That Amanda walked straight up to the only artifacts we brought home from that entire trip. That started everything. And I'll put in a little clip right here of Amanda walking directly up to them and me freaking out.
That was...
Oh my god, is something... Alright, you tell me. What's wrong with them?
The person who made them definitely had some shit going on.
Like what?
Like, messed with witchcraft.
I knew it!
Didn't know
I
how.
knew it. Okay, so this is where it begins. If it could focus, are you kidding? Hello? Please focus. Okay, well, anywho. So this is where it all begins. And let me just say, everything in here you see that is wood or looks handmade is handmade, and it's not store-bought. So we have these little Buddha guys. All of this stuff down here. All of these tiki guys. All these figurines. Moving on to over here. These little feet, the camel, this. Oh my gosh. Those. This is like the artifact shelf. All of this stuff. All of it. And oh, here's a bunch more in a box that my mom cleaned up, but like I said, we have like storage boxes full of this stuff. And let me just say, that's not even all of it. There's a lot more just scattered throughout the entire house, but this is the main room that holds all of it. So when Amanda walked in, they were sitting on this table right here, and she walked right over to them, picked them up, and was like, what, who gave you these? What are these? What's the story with them? And when she said that, I'm like, oh no, if she says something about it, I'm going to freak out. So that kind of traumatized me for a while. I'm not like 100% saying that someone did that to me, but just like the thought of it. Oh, and there's more over here on that wall also. I'm telling you guys, they're everywhere. Yeah, that's pretty much the whole story of when someone may or may not have put a curse or done witchcraft on me, or an item they gave to me with intents of harming me. So I am gonna wrap it up there just because it was a whole long story and I don't want to drag it out more. But I will say thank you guys so much for all the support you showed me on my last video. That honestly just took a weight off my shoulders because I didn't want to keep it from you guys too much longer, but I don't want to seem like I'm looking for pity or anything like that. But I will say I'm feeling a lot better already, so I will be going back to my normal schedule very soon. So this week I'm gonna try to do at least 2 videos, hopefully 3, but once again, December 1st, I'm doing 25 days of Christmas, so stay tuned for that. I hope you did enjoy this crazy story. Please let me know your thoughts on this down in the comments. Hopefully I don't sound crazy, but if you're new here, make sure you subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss out on any of my new videos. But other than that, thank you guys so much, and I will catch you on the next one. Peace.